Amy, I remembered. And now I'm going to bring you into the spotlight. Ben, you can unmute yourself. Say hi to the peoples. Did I say your last name correctly?
Yeah, that was good. Ben Potok.
Potok. Excellent.
Yeah.
Ben is coming to us from somewhere across the bridge over there in Canada. I understand
Hey.
when the rest of us were threatening, he. Never mind. I'm not going there. Ben, thank you so much for being with us today. Please take it away.
All right, thank you. Well, thanks everybody for being here to listen to me talk. That doesn't happen very much, so that's pretty cool. Thank you, Annie and Karen and Charlie, for having me on here to talk about Crowdcast. I think the best way to approach this will be to kind of just go through the platform itself, and that'll be a prompt for me to remember to tell you about all of the different parts and features, and then of course we'll answer any questions at the end. At Fleming, we've been using Crowdcast for...
Sorry, Ben. I hate to
Yep,
interrupt you.
sure, sure.
Suddenly, I'm getting a little bit of a noise sound. I don't know if you got a fan running in your room, but there's a little bit of a hissing going on. And maybe it's from the microphone or something. But if it's
I
not
don't
something
know.
you can fix easily, don't knock yourself out. But I just
No, I'm completely quiet here. It might be my computer fan, maybe.
okay. It's all right. It's good. We can hear you good. Carry on.
Okay, all right. Yeah, we've been using Crowdcast for many of our artists doing live streams. Crowdcast is it's a subscription-based platform, so you're paying a monthly subscription per month to present using the platform. It was originally designed for webinars, I believe, but then has been adapted, in the pandemic for concerts as well, and it's worked well for us. The thing that I like about it is that it's sort of an all-in-one platform, so you can go through the process of creating an event, monetizing it, and selling tickets directly through the platform, and then broadcasting your event. And then it's got some nice analytics that it collects for you that you can use after the event. It's really simple, so that's kind of a big thing for me, and something that's really important to me anytime I'm getting into a piece of technology. The more simple, the better. So yeah, let's just go there. I'm going to share my screen, and we'll go straight to Crowdcast. Okay, so this is, if you sign up for an account and log in, you end up here, which is the landing page for Crowdcast for anybody who has an account. And this is where, if you have a public event that you've created, you have a chance of getting it listed on their main page. I'm going to go to our dashboard right now, and I'm just showing you the Fleming Artists Crowdcast account. You can see we've got a lot of Jeff Daniels shows that we've already done and that are coming up. Your dashboard is divided into your upcoming and then your past events. And from here, you can access the event itself, and just saw that flash up there, certain select options for how you can interact with it, but you can get to all that from here too. So I just created this event for the talk today as a sample. It's in a 308 days. So yeah, I just want to go through the process of showing you how you would create an event on Crowdcast, and then we can talk about some of the additional features that come with it when you're putting together your events. So let me show you this. So you can create a new event here. I've already done that. These are going to be the same pages when you create an event as when you're editing. So we'll just go through them, and this will cover a lot of the features too. The basic information, this is kind of standard stuff. Your name, you set your schedule, which then counts down on your event page. And you can see it adjusts to your local time time zone, so that's nice. I'm in East EST, and then you can have multi-session events as well. I think that applies more to conferences and webinars, but it could be for a music event too. Description, if you want to change the metadata from the front end, meaning the shorter descriptions that go on social media, you can customize those so they're a little bit shorter. Then, like on other platforms like YouTube, you can have a public event which gets listed on that front page that I showed you first. Possibly, of course, there are a ton of events, so whether you get there or not is probably dependent on a number of factors. Or you can keep it unlisted, which is what we do because of the virtual touring, quote unquote, that we're doing, which is more targeted for specific geographic areas. So we don't want to have it public for anybody anywhere, because then we get into issues with conflicts with different venues that we're booking. Then as we go down, you've got your different access options. So a nice thing about Crowdcast is beyond the listing, you have different options for how people can gain access to the event. So you can open it up to anybody. You can collect payment through an integration, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The one that they've got built into the platform is for Stripe, if you have a Stripe account or you want to start a Stripe account. And so you set your price down here, which you can have a fixed ticket price, or you can do a sliding scale. So if you want to do sort of a pay what you can type arrangement, you can set your minimum and maximum price, and then when someone's buying the ticket, they can enter whatever amount they want to pay to access the event. And what's nice too, especially if you're integrated with Stripe, is that you've got currency options. So you can set your ticket price in a different currency. So if you're a Canadian artist playing in Canada, and you would suspect that most of the people purchasing tickets will also be in Canada, you can set to the Canadian dollar, or that applies to anywhere. Moving on, and remember, this is for creating an event or editing the event. You can you set that picture that you saw, which shows up on the registration page for somebody to buy a ticket, and also on the show page that that people can access after they buy their ticket, where they can chat, and it also has a countdown. I'll show you that in a little bit. You can have a photo or not, and then you can also link a video trailer if you create a video ad or whatever for your registration page. Some other cool features that Crowdcast allows is collecting some data when people register for the event. So I can create questions to ask people when they sign up, and it gives you, kind of like creating a form on a website builder. If you're familiar with that, you can select the type of information that you want, and then let's see, like I could say, how old are you, right? And then whenever somebody registers for a ticket, it will ask them this question, and then you collect those answers as part of your data that you get in the data for all your registrants after the show, and you can require it or not. It's really nice. In our situations, what we've done is, for example, if we have a show with multiple venues, or a single venue has requested certain information, like whether the person registering is a member of their rewards program or something like that, then we can add this question in and collect that data to pass on to the venue after the show, so they know how many people who purchased tickets were part of their rewards program or not. Just one example of how you might use this. So there's that, and then Crowdcast also allows you to multi-stream, so you can you can broadcast to the show page on Crowdcast, but you can also connect it to YouTube, Facebook Live, or you can do a custom stream if you're using a different service, or if you have a system set up on your website. This is really good for, I mean, if you have a free event and you want to make it more public or accessible in a different way on Facebook or YouTube, what I've done for some of the Jeff Daniels shows is created a YouTube stream and a YouTube stream that was unlisted that I could then broadcast the show to YouTube simultaneously. So if someone who had registered was having a technical issue or whatever with Crowdcast, then I could just send them to the YouTube link, so they would still get to see the show in some form, even though it wasn't directly on Crowdcast. So it's a good thing to have for a backup as well. And then moving on, you've got some advanced options here. You can create a custom URL for the show, which is cool and is really good for marketing. You know, rather than some random string, you can sort of decide what you want to what you want the URL to be for people to access. You can set a limit on the number of registrants. You can do a tip jar and prompt people. So if you're doing a free event or even a paid event and you want to collect tips, this is a nice way to sort of remind people that that is available. And what it does is it puts a little tip jar link on the bottom of your video so people can contribute in that way. Why don't I just leave this on the event to show you. You can also, you know, say whatever you want. The text of the button to buy the ticket, you know, save my seat, register for free, whatever it is. And then Crowdcast also has automated emails that it sends, and I'm going to show you those emails a little bit later in the settings on the platform. So yeah, you can decide if you want to actually have those emails go out. And there's one, when they register, they get an email with a link to the show and some more information. And then if you have the reminder email enabled, Crowdcast will send them an email 10 minutes before showtime with that same link and information. Some more options. You can tell people how many other people are watching or not. And then Facebook Pixel gives you some more options. If you're familiar with the way that Facebook advertising works, you can get a pixel from your ad campaign on Facebook, and then you can use that to connect your Facebook account with Crowdcast and get more insights and analytics that way. So that is, I'm missing something. So that is an overview for how you would create or edit an event, and that gives us a lot of. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention this too. So if you have Patreon, you can also broadcast for your Patreon followers on Crowdcast, and they've got a really nice direct integration there from Patreon to Crowdcast. And we have some artists on our roster who utilize that, and it's been very effective for them. All right, so yeah, so that's kind of editing and creating an event, and that sort of gives you a sense of a lot of the features. I wanted to show you now some of those features in action here. On the bottom, this is actually the show page, but from the artist's perspective, from the performer's perspective. So just to show you some of these features in action here on the bottom, another thing I can do is add a button to the stream. So let's say I've got merch or music to buy, say buy the album. and then I can, whatever the URL is to buy the album. Oops. I want to show it. And so what that does is it adds a button under the video, so that will link directly to wherever I want to send people to purchase that, or for whatever reason I want to link people away from the show. A couple of other cool things, some that we've used and some that we haven't used at Fleming. Ask a question is something that we have used a lot. We do, with Jeff Daniels, we do a Q&A at the end of the shows. So throughout the show, people are submitting questions for the Q&A, and then Jeff takes, 2 to 3 minutes after he finishes playing to come and collect the questions and then answer them for the the last half hour of the stream, and that has been really, really successful. So audience members can ask a question, and then the rest of the audience can upvote them, so you don't get a whole bunch of duplicate questions throughout the show. And it bumps up the ones with the highest votes to the top. So as the performer, it's very easy to see which questions are the most popular and which ones you should answer if you've got a limited amount of time. Another cool thing that allows you to do as a performer is you can create a poll, like which song should I play? Right, Freebird or Sweet Home Alabama, and then your viewers can vote on whatever questions you ask there, whatever poll you create. So that's nice to, for this type of, for that type of question, or if you're trying to gain some further insights or analytics. And then I'm going to get into analytics in a little bit, but you can see here, we remember we enabled, when we edited the event, we enabled the tip jar and the donations. So you can see that this is where people who are viewing would be able to tip, and you can prompt them for the contribution to the tip jar. And then finally, you've got a list of people who have registered and people who are currently watching also here. And again, in those, when we were editing the event, we were able to decide if we wanted the audience members to be able to see these numbers or not. Usually for Jeff Daniels, I keep them hidden. So it's not a very popular event, unfortunately. Yep, and then you've got the chat built in on the right here, and it just keeps the running chat, kind of like on YouTube Live, if you have any experience with that, going down the right side here. Okay, so I wanted to get into some of the analytics here that you have access to. And there are a couple different ways that you can access your analytics. And for me, this is one of the really cool parts of that's included with Crowdcast, that you don't get when you use YouTube Live or when you use Facebook. Oh, it's not gonna, I may have to take you into a different event to look at some of the analytics. But anyway, what they give you are, you can see like how many people came to your event and viewed the registration page, and then how many of those people actually bought tickets. And they also have tables where they tell you where people came from, like if they clicked on your link in Facebook, or if they did a Google search and found you that way, or if you're on the Crowdcast main page, if your event is public, you can see if they came from there. So it's got a lot of really, really great insights that you can then use as you put on more and more virtual shows. It lets you sort of target your marketing campaigns and hopefully get better results. All right. So, and I can show you some of that later. What you can do also, I want to mention, is you can create UTM links. And if you're not familiar with UTM links, that means that you can create unique links and then use them in different places. And those links all lead to the registration page for the event, but Crowdcast will track them so you know specifically where people came from, and they actually give you three different ways to classify. I mean, three different ways to make your links unique. In other words, I can do like my URL can tell me that it was an email campaign, and then it can also tell me like what date I sent out that email campaign. So this is that tool here, the Utm Link Generator, and this is really effective if the way that we've used it is if we've had multiple venues who were promoting a single virtual event, we can then create a unique link for each of those venues, and then they use that link to advertise. And then in the end, when we're working on the settlement, we know how many tickets came from this venue, and how many came from our own marketing, etc. So that's been really valuable for us, and there are a ton of uses for that. I wanted to show you the registration page. So this is what the page looks like when someone is coming to Crowdcast to register for your event. All of the information that we had filled in, and then the link to buy a ticket is here, and however you set it up, it prompts them to do that, and it's got the countdown. The way that people buy tickets on Crowdcast is they have their own account. So the tickets are secure, and they have to, when they buy a ticket, it creates their account. It's very simple, and it's automated. So they automatically have an account when they buy a ticket. It emails them a link to log in and finish the purchase. They finish the purchase, and then when they finish the purchase, it emails them the link to the show, and they can only access the show if they're logged into their Crowdcast account. So there are some pros and cons to that. The pros being that it's a secure ticket. They have to use their account to do it. It's also very automated. So from the performer's perspective or the organizer's perspective, it's fairly hands-off. The cons, on the other hand, are that a lot of times, because the emails are coming from Crowdcast, the email providers, Gmail, Hotmail, AOL, even sometimes, they may classify them as spam. So we've gotten a lot of inquiries to our support where people can't find the emails, or are having whatever issue for that reason. They can't log in because they're not finding or getting the emails. So that's kind of one of the downsides is there is sort of an amount of support that you have to provide in those scenarios. And then also there tend to be a lot of mistakes too, at least in my experience, people who are making typos in their email address, which causes a similar issue, to the point where people can buy a ticket and then, like through Stripe, and then they never receive the email, and then I have to go into Stripe and like try and find their email that has a typo in it, and make that whole thing work, and like manually then add their email address to the Crowdcast event so that they actually get the ticket link, and so on. So that's kind of the cons to having something so automated, is it can be a little bit tricky if something goes wrong. What we've done to kind of counteract that and solve those problems, you can create an account on Crowdcast that's registered to all of your events that has a password. So if absolutely nothing is working, I'll just give somebody those credentials so that they can watch the show in that account. Another thing that I've done that I will show you now is in the settings of Crowdcast, you can customize the emails that are going out to people who register for the event. So it's got this section for email templates. So if you know a little bit of HTML, and unfortunately that's the only way to do it, you can actually edit these emails that are going, the ones when someone buys a ticket and the reminders. So you can see here, the question I get the most: can I watch this on my smart TV? Of course, there are ways to do it, but troubleshooting that with somebody is pretty tricky. So we send out this FAQ as soon as somebody buys a ticket. So that's a nice feature to have. I'm going to kind of run through these fast so we have time for questions. And you can customize the different emails. The reminder email is a different template. And then if you import emails manually, comp tickets or whatever, then there's a different template for that. I just wanted to go through the integrations that you have options for too. This is really nice. You can see we're connected to Stripe. So we've got a Fleming Stripe account where we get all of our ticket revenue flowing. I mentioned Patreon before, and then some additional options for there again, more analytics. And then if you're not familiar with Zapier, it's a really powerful tool where you can really almost do anything in connecting apps and making really seamless workflows. So you can use Zapier to, if you don't want to use Stripe, for example, you could connect it to your PayPal using Zapier, but Zapier is a paid service. So you would have to be subscribed there. So you've got a lot of options for integrations, which is great. Let's go. I just want to show you a show page here. So let's go back to our farm event. And I wanted to tell you about going live. So when you're ready to go live on Crowdcast, you would use this green button down here, and it puts you in what's called the green room, which is kind of like when you go into Zoom, you've got the picture of yourself so you can preview. You can connect to Crowdcast with webcam and your system microphone if you've got a USB plugged in or whatever. Or you can use RTMP Studio, which would be if you, they give you a stream key and a custom link that you can then put into your encoder, whether it's OBS or StreamYard, Restream. So that's nice. You've got some flexibility there. A couple more things. You can have somebody else logged into your account while you're streaming on a different computer if you want a chat moderator during the show. You can also invite other people on screen. So if you've got a guest artist that you want to do a song or something like that, you can invite them up. Unfortunately, you can't do that if you're using RTMP Studio. But if you're using your system microphone, USB mic, then you can do that. And I think you can have up to 4 people at the same time streaming in one event at a certain account level, and then at a higher account level, you can have up to 6. When you end your broadcast, it automatically posts your replay, and you can leave that up for as long as you want. Once an event finishes, you have these options where you can archive it, which means it takes it down so it's not accessible anymore. And then you also get all of these different analytics from the export attendees. It gives you a really nice spreadsheet of everything that you had in your analytics section down here. It gives you in a really nice spreadsheet everybody's email address, who signed up, and like where they came from, whether they watched it live, whether they watched the replay. Tons of really valuable information for you. And then you can just see, kind of read down. I don't have to go through all of them. Here's where you can invite somebody on screen. If you need to email all of your attendees, save the chat log. If you've got comp emails that you want to add in, then you can just register emails manually that way. Yeah, so that's I want to leave some time for questions too. The last thing is that through Crowdcast you can broadcast from a computer. It works in Chrome. It works in all of the browsers. For mobile, you can on Android you can do it through your mobile browser, and then on iOS, I believe you can do it through the native Crowdcast app. And people can watch on the native Crowdcast app too. So I'm going to stop there. Feel like I could talk forever, but I want to answer some questions too.
All right, so I'm gonna have you leave the screen up because you started talking about that whole preparing to go live, and that's sort of where I personally right now would like a little bit more info. We do have a couple of questions in the chat, but I'm going to encourage everybody who is, there's all questions are good questions, even if you think you'll find the answer rewatching this, because so often these things like go by and I'm like, oh man, back up. But that was great, Ben. This is really intriguing to me. But in the preparing to go live, so let's just say I'm an artist and I'm just going to go directly through Crowdcast, no RTMP, no other service. Mm-hmm. How does that work, and how do you invite? Can you walk through sort of how you invite a guest into this? Like if that.
Sure. Yeah. So let me. I actually don't know what will happen if I'm on a Zoom and I click this. Let's just see. Let's just try it.
Let's do it.
Oh, okay. So here you go. So you've got your choice, right? You can, if you're using an encoder, it will give you. If you click here, it will give you your stream key and your URL to enter into your encoder and connect that way. And then otherwise, it puts you in what they call the green room, which is basically just a small video screen. And it's a way that you can test and make sure that you've got sound and video, and you can select the source. When you want to invite somebody else, you gain that ability when you're in the green room, so they can kind of join you in the green room as a and it gives you controls, right? Like if you want them to be full screen or split screen, all that becomes available once you invite them up. And when you're inviting somebody, they have to already be in your event. So you basically are inviting a viewer to broadcast with you. And again, you can do that from the options button up here. When you're actually broadcasting, it's this same screen once you start broadcasting, and it just has your video. It's like kind of darkened in here, sort of has a black overlay with a end stream button. Yeah, so you're actually in this exact screen. You can see the chat, and you've got all of these features down here available. And yeah, you would just go up here and invite somebody who was in your event on screen, and then it would prompt them, and they would accept, and then they would be put into a green room similar to the one you had here, so they could check their sound and video, and then they join your event when they're ready.
Yeah.
I mean, join your broadcast with you.
Right. You know, Wirecast, I'm seeing Wirecast here. And like one of our future tech talks, we were thinking about like looking into Wirecast and even Ecamm and some of the other options that are out there just because, you know, everything has its own pros and cons, I think, or they're just an
Yeah,
alternative, right, to it. So with
right,
this,
right.
like when I look at Crowdcast, I think it's it's almost like Zoom and a Restream. It's almost like those things kind of combined because you have that split screen ability that you might have
Yeah,
in
right.
something like a Restream Studio, and you have the chat, but it like a Zoom webinar, not necessarily what we're doing today, where we've got the audience here, they can unmute, they can talk. This is very much a audience is just, you know, you can't see them at all ever, right? They're
Exactly,
crowd.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, and you know that was one of the things that really was attractive to me about Crowdcast is that it's you know, like I said at the beginning, it's got a lot built into it, and I mean, at least in the position that I'm in, which is sort of more of an organizational support role. You know, like for the Jeff Daniels concerts, we've got them using OBS, you know, broadcasting from their studio, and then I can be simultaneously logged in to Crowdcast here, managing the chat, and also like setting up the multi-streams. So I don't have to have access to their encoder, you know, to their OBS in order to get this going to YouTube also, right? And in order to have access to all of the features that I need for the jobs that I do during the shows, which is, I mean, it's turned out to be really, really convenient. And, you know, for anybody that's putting on a concert and has somebody that's working with them, you know, that means that that person doesn't have to be with them physically in order to do that, which is a huge, huge benefit, especially now.
Yeah. So can you talk just briefly if when Jeff goes into the show, so he has to register, or does he get a special link that puts him in this space? That so
So
you're
they're yeah, I have them logging into this account. So we're
I
both logged into this account.
got
You can see in the chat here, it just shows up as Fleming Artists every time I say something, right? Like this is my event. I could start broadcasting and continue chatting. But yeah, so from there they start the event and they, you know, they have the OBS there and they're broadcasting the actual video and the audio, and then from here I'm able to, in the very same account, I'm able to write in the chat and deal with all of this stuff. And if I have, you know, people having technical issues, I can come and register their emails. And yeah, I mean, it's really convenient in that way. You know, if I, you know, like I said before, if I want to set up a multi-stream, I can just edit it and go and set up the YouTube multi-stream to our YouTube
yeah.
studio account and so on.
Well, all right. I'm going to go through the questions right now because there's been a few of them, and I think they're all actually fairly quick. The first one
Cool.
that came through was Mark. Mark Smith has a lot of questions. Mark, I like your questions. Can you do a multi-day events, or did you just set up different event? Like, is it?
Yeah, so when you set it up, I haven't done this personally, but when you set it up, we had that option when we were creating the event to set the day and time, and yeah, you can do multi-day events. I've seen and heard of like conferences that'll happen over a week or over a weekend. And yeah, they set them up on multiple days. I think when you set those dates, when you're creating the event, you would just set it for whatever the other dates were, and it would create multiple events as part of a series.
Right, right. And Mark, your question, can you support a chat monitor, is a little confusing to me. So I'm not 100. I think that what Ben said, and if this doesn't answer your question, he mentioned that you would have somebody else logging into your account pretty much from anywhere, and they would be monitoring the chat. They would have the same view as you do. So hopefully that
Right,
answered
right.
your question, and maybe that came in beforehand. Ian's asking about sliding scale, and I'm pretty sure that the answer was yes. There, you can make it a free show, right? And just let it be tip jar, right? And
Yeah.
yeah,
So down, just to show you again real quick. So down here, if you've got it, if you for access, if you set it to payment,
mhm.
you've got your option for a fixed price, or if you want to do a sliding scale. So I can say, I want to be from $1 to $50, and then when somebody goes to buy a ticket, it will just give them a blank field and say enter an amount between 1 and 50, and then they can
and
pay whatever for their registration.
and where it says access, I guess if it's just on anyone, then it means it's free, right? Right.
Exactly, yeah. But I mean, people still need to register for it with their email to access it, but there's no gateway to doing that.
Cool. And the tip jar thing, can you demonstrate how that looks like? There's a way, I saw that you put like that button to go buy a CD. And the one thing that I've noticed that most other things have is the ability to do a banner that comes across, but that banner isn't clickable. And so is there a donate button?
Let's
If
check
you,
it out. Yeah,
yeah,
we did this for one. So we enabled in the settings when we edited the event, we enabled the donate button. So as the performer, I can prompt people for the contribution, and I think what that will do is it will just give them a message, and from the audience's perspective, they see the message, and then it actually looks just like this. They've got a little donate button here that they would click and then enter an amount.
gotcha.
But when I prompt them, it just gives them a message on screen that they have the ability to do that. What's nice about it too, from the audience perspective, is that if I'm not using these, they don't show up. So the audience does not see analytics, obviously. If I don't want to show how many people are in it, which was an option in the edit event, then that will be gone. If I haven't created polls, then that's not there for them. And same goes for ask a question, and call to action is not there. They just either see the button or don't.
Okay. So the call to action was that, like, for example, that go buy a CD thing that you made, right? By
Yeah,
the
call to action.
yeah.
This button right here. Yeah, and it actually looks identical on the audience side. It's got the video, and then the button is right underneath it.
And your call to action could be a donate, conceivably,
Yeah,
right? Yeah.
sure, you could do that too. I mean, you would have to then send them to another website to donate, because in your call to action, you're creating the text for the button and then the URL where you want them to go.
Gotcha.
So that's a little more effective to send them to your merch page or where they can buy your album, and then
Right.
use the actual donate button
Yeah.
for donations, because then they don't have to leave the event to do it.
Okay, cool. Now, so here's a quick question. Is closed caption available?
No, no. So I've answered that a few times too. I've looked up their support docs, and they are working on it, but it has not been launched to my knowledge yet. So it's kind of a coming soon, to
Cool.
the best that I know. Yeah.
Yeah. Can I ask what version or what level you Fleming is at? Are you guys at this? I see. I've got it up over here on my website, so I'm. Or,
Sure. Yeah. You're talking about the subscription level, right?
yeah.
Yeah. We're at the highest. It's not. I mean, honestly, it's not a cheap proposition. If you're going to use Crowdcast, like, you better be playing some shows. And you can see it gets pretty limited too at the lower levels. A lot of the things that I showed you here are not available in the cheaper plans. Like most platforms, you get a discount if you sign up for a yearly plan. But you can go to Crowdcast and get all of this, all of the details on this. But what they do is they limit your number of hours that you can broadcast and the number of attendees that you can have for each event. And then something that I forgot to talk about, of course, were the fees. So Crowdcast does take a small percentage of all of your ticket sales. So you need to consider that. At the lower level plans, they take 5%. And then at the higher level plans, it goes down to 2%, which is nice. But yeah, you can see it's not, per month. It's not a cheap proposition to have this. So you want to be using your the full allowance of your plan. What's nice is that if you exceed these marks, it doesn't stop you. It just adds on like a small overhead charge. Like if you have the starter plan and you get 55 attendees for an event, it just charges you 15 more cents per extra attendee above your allotted number. So that's kind of nice because you don't hit a ceiling where people are not allowed in anymore. But yeah, I would say this is one of the negatives. Definitely one of the negatives as far as using it. You can see the limitations get less and less as you get to the higher plans.
The really expensive ones, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can see how if you're a agency, a booking agency that has multiple clients, and you might want to just, you're all using it, everybody's doing a bunch of shows, then it's, there's a lot of really cool features that I really like about this.
Right.
It's just sort of deciding, the pros and cons between that and what a Zoom can do or other things. Because so generally speaking, sound wise, until recently, Zoom was just like this taboo place.
Right. Yeah. Terrible. Right.
Right. But it
Yeah.
got so much better, and people are more open to it. But
Right.
when it comes to Crowdcast, are there sound settings? Is it just a matter of whatever you're feeding, it's just as good?
Yeah. That's it. It's whatever you're feeding. It's just as good. They've really done a good job in my experience. I've had no issues with video or sound in terms of quality. Yeah, it's the highest available specs in terms of what somebody would be able to perceive as far as the audio and the video. If you're using an encoder like OBS, whatever settings you've got in OBS are being adopted. I don't know the right word. Are being used in your Crowdcast stream. So yeah, so no issues there. For us, one of the things that we really like about Crowdcast is the fact that, unlike Zoom, you don't have everybody up on video, and this is very individual, like, for, per the artist and how they want their show to feel, right? But if you want to sort of have it more like more of a broadcast and more like being on stage, and have to worry less about your meeting settings and all of those types of details, this was a great option. So yeah, I mean, that choice is really kind of dependent on how you want your show to feel, but definitely no limitations when it comes to quality.
That's
On here.
cool. Good to know. Good. Yeah. Okay. So, Louise unfortunately had to go, but I do want to get an answer to her question, which she said, and what in your experience now, what has been the settlement time? She said she used Crowdcast once and it took weeks to get their money.
Oh,
That
yeah. So that's one thing to consider also, and that actually has more to do with your payment processor than it does with Crowdcast. Because remember, you're integrating your payment processor with Crowdcast. So whether you're using Stripe, which is the built-in one, or something else through the Zapier integration. But like for us, for example, we had not had a Stripe account before we started doing these virtual shows. So what Stripe does, if you don't have a a history of processing online payments is they will put some restrictions on your account initially until you can prove that you are reliable or not charging fraudulently, I guess. So for a point they were, or till a point they were withholding a certain amount of the money that we were collecting before we could actually get it paid out. So, that's going to affect different people and organizations differently based on what their situation is. If they've got money on hand that they can use for settlements, then they don't have to wait for that. But yeah, I mean, that has more to do with the payment processor. If you've got a business PayPal account that you've been using and you sign up for Zapier and use that integration, shouldn't be an issue. The money actually goes from Crowdcast to your payment processor immediately when somebody buys a ticket. So if I go into Crowdcast today and buy a ticket for an event, I see the organization or the performer sees that money and that transaction in their payment processor at that moment. The money's not withheld or anything like that until after the show.
Right. How hard would it
Which
be?
I mean, it also kind of has its pros and cons, right? Because you have to manually deal with refunds and things like that through your payment processor.
Right. Oh, payments, just another thing.
Yeah, right.
All right.
Another tech talk.
Yeah, right, exactly. Jacob, I see your question, and I promise I will get to it, but I feel like I want it to be the last thing we do. So I'm going to move on quickly to, I think I just saw one more question about connecting to OBS. So as somebody who uses OBS, except for when I'm in Zoom, because I haven't figured that part out yet. But, if we live stream out, we're OBS, Restream, and then Restream sends it to the platforms. So if I'm using Crowdcast and OBS, and Crowdcast will stream out to those platforms, I don't need Restream, or like the OBS, you yourself as a person who's an artist using OBS, is this connected? You get a stream key from Crowdcast, right? Is that?
Correct. Yeah. If you select, like when you go live, if you select to go live with RTMP Studio, then it will give you a stream key and a URL that you can enter into OBS, and that will make the connection between OBS and Crowdcast. And so you really just need those two. The way that I always think about streaming is, sort of like links in a chain, right? You've got like the performance and then the encoder, which is then the encoder is connected to the broadcasting platform, right? And so your ability to multi-stream can kind of happen on the encoder level or on the broadcast, like the platform level here. So depending on the platform and depending on the encoder. I'm not sure why you would go from OBS to Restream. If there's some functionality maybe in Restream that you don't have in OBS, that will be a reason to do that. But you're saying to do the multi-stream. Yeah. So if you're going to Crowdcast, you can go straight from OBS to Crowdcast and then set up the multi-streams in Crowdcast.
Right.
And as you can see, let me just go here. You can do, you can actually do multiple,
so not to be
multiple streams so that you've got more than one happening.
Right. So you have to get a I'm sorry, this is like totally self-centered because this is and nobody else is asking this question, so I'm going to ask it right now. For me, when I look at this, I go, okay, why not grab my stream key from Restream, which sends it to the multiple places, and just use the custom, which I'm assuming, what's custom?
So custom would be if you want to stream to anything other than these.
Right. So if you click on custom, what are you putting? You're putting in so like with Zoom, the way I send this out from Zoom, I put in a custom live stream URL and I get that from Restream, which is connected to Facebook, YouTube, all the places that we want to go, right? So,
Right.
in a weird sort of way, although I don't know, the whole nuance of what to combine and like what you can, and it's just fascinating to me. All of this is very
Right.
fascinating, but I'm a geek
Right.
that way. So I get a kick out of trying to figure out like what can you do by incorporating Crowdcast that you couldn't do without it, and that
Right.
sort of lands us in the last, kind of how I want to wrap this up. So why don't you because I think we're at the end of our time here. I want to wrap up, and you can go ahead and stop sharing your screen,
All right.
and I can have a little chat.
There we go. Yeah.
Hey, I'm gonna add myself in here, and this was Crowdcast does a lot more than I thought it did. I was really, I'm really impressed with it, and I that was intriguing to me. But it's different. So it's about, deciding what works for you, I think. Somebody did ask, like, why not just use OBS, which is free? They didn't say the which is free part, but that's how I took it. StreamYard, which is free. And, now you've got the opportunity to do what it seems most of what you have there, and I guess it's just a preference about your show, like what kind of a show you want to present. If you're just putting this out on social media and that's where it's going to be and live for the world to see, then great, right? You don't need Crowdcast. But
Yeah, I mean the thing about Crowdcast for us, and what we've been focused on at Fleming, is how do we take this corner that we've been forced into with the live streaming, and sort of get how do we turn it into a positive, and how do we use it to move our industry forward, right? I mean, we can't play these shows for free forever. And I understand there are different philosophies about this. We can't be, donations will run dry eventually. So what was attractive to us about Crowdcast is the fact that we have a secure ticket, right? Like, even if you're collecting, even if you're charging for tickets and then streaming to an unlisted YouTube, it's really easy to share that. You're also, as big as YouTube is, the quality is not as good. So if people are paying for a ticket, especially if they're paying more for a ticket for like a more established act or whatever, a more established artist, then they're going to expect a certain quality. And it was just sort of having it all built in and having the secure ticket that was really the thing that put us over the top to using Crowdcast. And there are some other platforms that do that too. And I've experienced with a ton of platforms that all have kind of their different pros and cons and quirks to them. And there are other platforms that do certain things better than Crowdcast. So that's just where we landed, and it's been working well for us.
yeah, I was going to say, once you find an app that you like that does everything you need it to do, until you're wanting something else. And yeah, Jacob, who asked the question about why not using OBS, he meant more with Crowdcast. And so, I think essentially that again becomes a question of if you're using OBS to get your sound and video, if you're using that as your studio at home, then you can use it with Crowdcast, but you don't have to. He's asking, is there a reason
Exactly.
not to?
I mean, the nice thing about OBS is that, and that gets into more of what are the nice features that you have in OBS, but it's sort of having that the ability to kind of prepare your own setup beforehand, and you can also do like have the images superimposed over the screen. So that would be something that's set up on OBS and then shown through Crowdcast, but you don't actually do that work on Crowdcast where you're putting the images in there and that type of stuff. So it's good. The shows I've been doing most have been Jeff Daniels, obviously, and we partner with venues, and we've been doing virtual touring. So, partnering with venues all over the country and the world. And, they put a little, like in the lower corner of the screen, they put the venue logo in OBS that then is broadcast through Crowdcast. And you can also record in OBS as a backup. So if you have an issue online, if you lose your internet connection, but you want to rebroadcast the show, you can record it in OBS and then upload it to the Crowdcast event so people can watch the replay. So yeah, there's a number of different benefits that have more to do with the functionality in OBS.
Yeah, right. I know. And speaking of OBS, just a little plug. I had to get back on the phone with my resident OBS guy, Brandon, because there's more to be done. So we are going to be having more OBS talk somewhere down the road.
Oh yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's an incredible encoder, and it's
Oh,
got so, I mean, I don't know how anybody could know all of the things that you can do on it. It's pretty amazing.
no, it's never ends. Never ends. Okay, well, listen, we sure appreciate your time today. I think those of you who weren't looking at the chat just now, I did put links in there for Ben's both, his own his own company, which is Xbit Technology, and then the Fleming Artists Make It Workshop.
Make it workshop.
Make It
Yeah.
Workshop. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. So like I was talking about our sort of philosophy with these virtual shows and the live streaming at Fleming. We've had a lot of experience. From the beginning of the pandemic, we sort of got ahead of the game here and organized Fleming Fest, which was a completely virtual 2-day festival that we did on YouTube Live. That was like before we were learning about all these platforms and everything was coming out. It was in the beginning of April. So we've been doing the virtual shows for a while, and our focus has been more so like of how the virtual shows are fitting into the larger industry ecosystem, right? So how can we be working collaboratively and helping each other's artists and venues and agents and managers and promoters? How can we be working on this together and sort of pushing forward? So we put together this workshop. The registration is open now. It's going to be a 3-session, 3-week workshop with a networking event at the very end in addition. And the focus of it is going to be sort of telling people and teaching people about how that all works, like from, for artists, like pitching yourself as a virtual artist through promoting and marketing and putting on the show, all the way through handling the settlement, because a lot of things have flipped and artists are collecting ticket revenue and paying out venues now, which is completely different than it was before. From the venue perspective, like what to look for when you're booking artists for virtual shows, and then kind of all the ins and outs of that, and again going through that whole process from beginning to end through settlement and collecting data. So anyway, in short, this workshop we're doing, the registration is open, and you can read more about it at flemingartist.com/make-it-workshop.
Nice.
Yeah.
Sorry, I realized there was a couple more questions. I tried to get them answered into that into the chat because I think I heard the answers. But if we didn't get your question answered, and one thing I didn't put in there is Ben at Fleming. We're going to give Ben did say he was kind enough to say it was okay to email him with your questions. So if you had more questions that you thought of, or maybe perhaps I missed it somehow in the chat, and we ran out of time, I think you can go ahead and email him, and he'll find time in his very busy schedule to answer you. But in the meantime, Ben, thanks so much for joining us today. This was really interesting, and I'm curious personally. I think, it's money, but I am curious about Crowdcast. I think it has a lot of benefits. I've attended a lot of Crowdcast events, and a lot of webinar type things that were free. So, but there's always 2 people on a screen, and there's screen sharing that seems to be very doable. And so it seemed like a good platform to look into. So we appreciate your time. And
Yeah, no problem.
this is when we go into gallery view and everybody does the big old wiggling their hands to thank Ben for taking time out of his schedule today. Talk to us about Crowdcast. Don't forget that we do have a community peer session scheduled for Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those of you have been reminding me that I have had EDT on things, I do apologize. I'm, a little slow. But yes, please join us for this community peer session on Thursday. And then again, next week, our tech talk is a social media brain dump. So much like we did the Let's Talk Gear, we're going to talk social media. And this is going to be a big group conversation where all the attendees can just share their social media expertise. We'll have specific questions for you. So that registration should be up on the website by tomorrow. So thanks, everybody. Wave to Nicholas and Smitty and Charlie and let's see, anybody else, farm board members floating around. Karen Rigotti's back there. So wave to our farm team and our virtual connections team. And thanks again, Ben. This is the ugly part, the awful, abrupt farewell. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye.